And good morning, everybody. Seems like everybody is connecting here. It's great to see all of you. Hey, Jody, Dustin, happy Tuesday. Almost forgot what day it was. It's normally Thursdays that we meet. Today is a off cycle, and we're meeting on a Tuesday. So we appreciate all of you accommodating our schedules, and hope that you guys are in the know that we're already past halfway through November. There's literally a month and a half left to 2021. So if you're 100 million shy, you have 45 days to make up that volume in order to hit your goal. Just want to
No pressure.
Make sure you know that. And hey, we love feedback. So thank you to all of you who are giving us really candid feedback to make this platform the very best that it can be. I cannot tell you how great it's been for all of us, and just hearing the effects that it's having on a lot of you gives us a lot of satisfaction. And to that end, a couple of different things. One, as you know, Triibe, we are coaching around 23 areas of your business and your life. And to this point, we have been gangbusters on nothing but tactics, right? It has been the bulletproof fire. It's been the pre-purchase consultation. It's been exposure to how a lot of people are doing it at a very high level. And we got feedback from a lot of you that we also need to be working on leadership skills and those other areas that we're coaching on. And so today, you know, the five of us went to a leadership conference, including Talbot, who I don't know if he's on this call or not, but it was great to have him out there as well, with Jocko, Willink, and Leif Babin, who wrote a book called Extreme Ownership. And we're going to give some feedback. There was so much content that Ryan and Danny are going to share with you today, but we are constantly curating all this information and picking out the nuggets that we think are most important for not only us, but for you guys. And we've been curating all this information from the coaches that we've learned from and the mentors that we've learned from over the last 20 years, and just felt like there were some really great things to come back and give to all of you guys today. And so it's in that spirit that we're going to bring it back to the inside game and really talk about leadership today. And whether you're a one-person team, or you've got a giant team, or you're leading a company or a region or a division, it doesn't matter. It starts with leading yourself first. And so today, I'm going to hand it over to RG, who's going to talk about some of the nuggets that we picked up at this conference. And I'm really hoping that you guys pay attention today, that you really drop in, that you try not to be distracted, and you can really key in on some of these points. Because I'll tell you, sitting there as an audience member, there was just a way that Jocko and Leif had of really making you accountable for your own life, and it was impactful. And so I'm excited to pass it over to my friend and partner and brother, RG. Take it away, man. Happy Tuesday.
Thanks, Mark. Team, Mark said something there that I was thinking the whole time, and I'm glad he said it. I would highly encourage everybody just to lock in right now. This is something that was an absolute game changer for me in my business, and most importantly in my personal life. There's a lot of these things where you can be doing email and other stuff and kind of go back and watch it later. But if you can lock in for the next hour here, I promise it's going to make a massive impact in every area of your life. So I'm going to be talking about extreme ownership, and the biggest part of extreme ownership, which is the fear around it. So for anyone who doesn't know what extreme ownership is, it is that essentially every problem you face in business and in life is a leadership problem. And when you understand that, the world becomes much easier. I'll give you some context. I'll give you a business and a life story. Years ago, before I read the book and before I really immersed myself in this, things would happen in my mortgage practice. And the first thing I would say, you could ask anyone on my team, they'd probably laugh. The first thing I used to say is, all right, well, whose fault is it and how can we fix it? And looking back now, I just want to slap myself right in the face. But I honestly thought that, like, okay, we just need to figure out where whose fault it was, and we can train on that and make sure it doesn't happen again and kind of do this whole deal. And so we'd go around and okay, obviously this is your fault. You did this, you did that. And then they'd get defensive and say, well, no, I did this and they did that. And it was never as easy as I thought it should be, right? It's super simple. You didn't do this. You should have done that. It's your fault. Now we fix it. And extreme ownership is the opposite of that, right? It's that when something challenging happens, when there's a problem, that it's my fault as the leader. And we're going to walk through kind of how to unpack that. But the life example of that is, I'm super fortunate. My wife and I could probably count the number of disagreements or arguments we've had in 12 years on one hand. It was like 2 weeks after we got back from this event, and she comes downstairs, and I'm watching Jurassic Park with my 5 and 7-year-old daughters. We had talked about not letting them watch Jurassic Park months ago. I had obviously forgot. And I fast forwarded through all the scary parts, but my wife was not happy, right? And so we got to breakfast and we're hanging out, and I could tell there was something wrong. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? And she tells me that, she was upset that I was letting the girls watch this. And immediately I was like, but I did this and I did that and I did this. And I was just like, oh my God, I literally just learned this. I'm like, you know what? That is totally my fault, right? Like, we talked about this. That's on me. I'm sorry. Like, I shouldn't have let them watch it. Not going to happen again. And instantly she goes, no, there's some things they probably would have liked. And like, it was just an immediate turnaround, right? Because I took ownership, and then she was able to take ownership over some of her part of it. So the premise of extreme ownership is just, when something happens, it has to be your fault. You didn't train them appropriately, right? And there's so many examples in your business where, Jocko used the phrasing when he's, doing a debrief after a mission, right? The mission could have gone completely sideways. He can go in there and say, you didn't do this, and you didn't do that, and you didn't do this. And what happens? Right? His team turns around and says, no, I did this, they didn't do that, you didn't do this, they didn't do that, because it's an immediate defensiveness. As soon as someone feels attacked, it's just a natural defense. Your brain is going to try and protect you from harm. So you're immediately going to throw up your defenses, you're going to get in fighting posture, and you're going to fight back, right? Because you don't want someone saying that you did something wrong. The alternative to that is that same debrief of that mission, he could go in and say, this happened. This is my fault. I didn't train you well enough on, how to do a certain tactic this way and that way and the other. This team, we didn't have the right gear. We didn't have the right system. This team, I didn't draw the map up the right way. You obviously didn't know where it to be. That's my fault. I need to do better there. And what do you think happened? Every single person says, nope, you trained me there well. This is my fault. I'm going to do that better next time. My bad, boss. I'm on it. Every single department. And team, it's almost like a magic trick. Now, when I first learned it, I actually kind of used it as a magic trick, right? I was like, well, I'm just going to take extreme ownership because it's going to work. Even though I didn't really believe that it was my fault, I just kind of said it was because it made the problem go away, right? It was just like, well, if I just say it's my fault, they're going to say, no, it's their fault. And, everybody will be happy and sunshine and rainbows. The problem is, a lot of people ask, hey, what about when it's truly not my fault? And that took me a while to really get. If the problem you don't believe is truly your fault, you need to find a way to make it your fault, right? And not only that, but you actually have to believe it's your fault. And that is the biggest takeaway that I hope you guys get from this. Like, let's imagine you and an underwriter are going at it on a file, right? You think this, they think that, this wasn't in the file. They didn't know this. They didn't have this note. This wasn't uploaded. And you just start kind of getting combative. The best way to solve that problem, we have an underwriter named Kelly, so I'm going to use her names. I would say, Kelly, this is totally on me. I'm so sorry that you're dealing with this as an underwriter. I should have done this better. I should have made this more clear. I should have asked the right questions. You know what? I'm going to do better, right? I'm going to do, but if you can help me with this one, I promise I'm going to do better. Like, this is definitely on me. And find a way to actually make it on you, right? Don't just say it because you know it's going to work. Like, really think, like, what could I have done? Like, get really curious. What could I have done to make this better? This goes for, even with your kids, with your spouse, your relationships, with your friends, right? Definitely with your team, is you have to really figure out, like, what could I have done as a leader to have prevented this, right? To have preempted this from happening. And if that's the lens that you work through your business and your life with, man, you will see things change in a massive way. Everything will get better because people don't want to blame, right? People want to take responsibility when it's actually their fault, or when they feel like they could have done better. But if they're attacked, it's not going to work. Anybody have anything they want to add? I'm going to get into the kind of the fears of the reason why people don't take extreme ownership, but anybody have any questions around that, or anybody want to add anything to it?
RG, I'll add just a point because, I think it's a mindset shift more than anything, right? And you brought up the fact of, well, what if it's not my fault? Well, as leaders, we have to take ownership, right? We're setting the tone for our teams. And if they see us step up and lead in this way, the blame game stops. It becomes unacceptable to do the blame game and start pointing fingers of, this was Sean's fault or this was Jesus's fault. We don't do that on our team. We take ownership, we take responsibility, and you will watch how quickly resolution happens and the team rallies around one another to solve the process issues. So I think it's, just if you can frame it up and think about it in the way of a mindset shift that starts with each one of us as leaders, that allows you to start, percolating that down through the team as a way of your culture.
Yeah, and I would challenge you to think about any conflict that you've had in your life just in the past couple of days, and just really think, like, if I took ownership of that, right, if I stepped into it, how would that have impacted? How would it have changed? Right? Would the person have reacted differently? Would the outcome have been better? I promise you the answer is going to be yes in every area of your business in your life.
Hey, Ryan, I'd love to add a comment to that.
Yeah.
After reading that Extreme Ownership book, like the next day I jumped on. Can you guys hear me all right, by the way?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. I jumped on the phone with our head of underwriting, and she came at me attacking, right, on a conversation about a tough file, and she was dug in, and I just was like, you know what? This is totally my fault. I really fucked up. How can you help me get to a solution? And you could we're on phone, and she's just like, you can just see her like backpedaling, like hear it almost like, and it was like, we figured out a solution in like 2 minutes on the phone. And with all my clients or anything with realtors, if anything happens and I just say, I really messed up on this, and I don't put it to processing or underwriting or anybody else, it just takes away the attack mode of all your clients and everybody as well. So anyways, just wanted to share that. It's been super helpful for me as well, just on that same page.
Yeah, and team, I'll tell you, there's no such thing as being a born leader, right? It's kind of a cliche term that's definitely overused. People are like, oh, he's a born leader. I promise you, everybody needs to work on being a better leader every day. And when you think about the 5 areas, not only of any business, right, but even in your life, like, you have leadership is always at the top. Everything else comes, like leadership as a father, leadership as a husband, leadership as a team leader, leadership as a friend. We're typically not innately born with these qualities. These are skills that you have to learn and practice, and over time they become second nature, right? You're not going to have to think about it. Something's going to go wrong, and you'll be like, oh, that's my bad. Like, it's obviously my fault, because life doesn't happen to me, it happens by me. And if it's happening by me, then I can take ownership of everything around it.
Hey, Ryan, one other thing, that came up for me as Casey was talking, it would have been very easy for Casey to go in and say, whoa, you're actually in the wrong. Let me show you why you're in the wrong. And we got 2 ways we can approach it. You can be right, or you can focus on, how do we get the solution here? How do we get the outcome? And if you can put your ego aside and realize that being right isn't always going to get you your solution you're looking for, or your solution with the least amount of resistance, it becomes a lot easier to say, let me check that. Look at the reaction that the underwriting manager had with Casey. All of a sudden, she became an advocate to find the solution because she was empowered when Casey said, hey, can you help me figure this out? Now we're on track to find a solution, as opposed to me still trying to prove why you're wrong and I'm right.
Yeah, there's something called leadership capital, right? Leadership capital is something that you have, the finite amount of it. And with every interaction, you either give it away or you get it back. You get more of it, or you have less of it. So let's use that as same example. Let's say Casey, just stood firm and opened up screen share, showed this, and this, and was proved right. She goes, all right, okay, yeah, you're right, great, thanks. And then like he was right, but he has way less leadership capital, right? Because that underwriter is just not going to want to deal with him moving forward. But he took the extreme ownership route and said, look, this is my fault. I need, I'd love your help. How can we work together to solve this? Now he gets the same outcome. He just gets leadership capital back, right? He has more because that person would love to work for a leader like that. So to ask yourself, what type of leader do you want to be? And again, this is probably more important in your outside of work than it is inside, even though it helps with both. But I want to move now into why people don't do this, right? Because there's a real fear around extreme ownership, especially when you're not trained in it, right? Or where you don't have experience with it. And there's 4 major components to kind of the fear around, well, I don't want to say this is my fault, right? Or I don't want to be the one accountable for this because it wasn't my fault. Like I did everything right. The first is fear of losing respect. And team, this was a big one for me for a long time. It still is. I still let my ego and my emotion get in the way of extreme ownership at times. There'll be times when I'm on and I'm working with the team and I'm trying to work through strategies or whatever, and they come up with something that is different or even better than kind of what we have or what we've created. Or maybe I created something that created a problem and they have a solution. There'll be times when my ego gets in the way again. I don't want to take ownership because I feel like they may respect me less if I created something that went wrong, right? Or if it was really my fault. And it's a completely unfounded fear, right? Because when it comes to leadership capital, I don't know about you all, but I'm like, if someone says, hey, I created this, this is my bad. Like your idea is better, right? Like let's shift and let's pivot and let's do this. And I apologize for not doing this correctly. Like, let's move in that direction. You think they're going to have more respect for me or less than if I just stuck my foot in the ground and said, no, we're doing it my way? Right. So people respect leaders for being open-minded and for taking ownership. It's not the other way around. Like you will lose respect if you always are blaming other people and saying why it's not your fault, it's somebody else's fault. It's a leadership capital negative to the largest extent. Next is fear of consequences, right? Because you think, well, if I take ownership, then this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And it's like, I'm going to have to take, if I take ownership, I'm going to have to take ownership of the next thing, right? If it is my fault, now I have to actually go fix it. And if I don't take ownership, then somebody else can fix it. Well, what I'll tell you there is consequences don't go away, right? They just get worse. Let's say your spouse is, upset at you because you're working late, every single night, and you as opposed to taking ownership and saying how you're going to improve on it, you just keep saying, well, we need this and I need to do that on my business and our income and our retirements and the kids and this and that and the other, right? If you took ownership and said that, then you'd actually have to solve the problem, right? You'd have to find a way to get home at a decent hour or to stop working at a decent hour and to spend the appropriate amount of time with your spouse and your kids. Well, it's not going to go away, right? Like it's going to get worse. But if you take ownership of it and say, hey, my wife's name is Brand, look, you're right. I'm really sorry. Like this is totally on me. I need to be better at my time management. I need to be better at, beginning and ending my day at the right times, being present with the family. Like, can you help me on that? Like, can we talk about how we can, work together to create a better strategy, a better day, a better system? Like, which one do you think is going to give you a better life? Right? The explanations and putting the ownership everywhere else but you, or doing what Casey said and said, 100% my bad, let's solve it together. So don't worry about taking on the consequences. They're going to be there regardless, and they're going to get worse, right? So don't worry about the fear of consequences.
Hey, RG, real
Yeah.
quick on that. I think one of the things that's important is when we hit it head on, the reality of what the consequences are lay themselves out, as opposed to sweeping it under the rug and pretending like it's not there and not facing it. We manifest it into all these possible outcomes and scenarios in our heads that become massive distractions, right? So if you want to clear the path, right? If you want to be able to have absolute focus and know, all right, what do I need to solve? What is in front of me? You got to get in front of those conversations. And it starts with opening up, taking that ownership of it. And then I know what I have to deal with, as opposed to all these things that we can manifest in our head that aren't even realities, but it's because we don't address it head on.
Yeah, that's well said. So team, the next thing in regards to why people don't take extreme ownership is that they're afraid of kind of being the only one. And, there's a reason why there's like, tribal feeling, tribal, types of relationships. There's, power in numbers, strength in the mob mentality, is that people don't want something to land specifically on their head. But there's an empowerment to this, right? If you are actually the one who takes ownership, well, then you get to be the person to solve the problem, right? Because no one else is coming. Like if me and Chris are having a conversation and he's telling me, hey, this went wrong and this went south, and let's say Chris is a realtor of mine and he didn't give me the contract for 10 days. I didn't even know they were in contract for the first 10 days of a 30-day escrow. They delayed the appraisal. All sorts of things happened that were, really could have gone better if he would have done his job better. And he comes to me and says, hey, we're closing late in this thing, we're closing ugly. If I put blame anywhere else but on myself, well, then I need other people to actually solve the problem. But who's better to solve that problem and get that deal done and repair that relationship than me? Right? Like I should take full ownership of the fact that not only is it my fault, but I can solve this problem. Right? And I should solve this problem because I expect my team to solve it, or Chris's team to solve it, or anybody, or the client to solve it. It's just not going to happen. So you want to kind of redirect away from, well, I don't want to be the only one to own this thing. I got to blame escrow. I got to blame your transaction coordinator. I got to blame the appraiser. I got to blame everybody. Well, how does that help? The number one real estate agent relationship I have today was because of a challenging file. He was a listing agent on a file and it started to go sideways. And this is way before I knew any of this stuff. So this is just somewhat intuitive. I just said, look, totally on me. And I was calm and I was level-headed. And I really, even though I didn't believe it was my fault at the time, I kind of found a way to tell everyone, hey, this is how we can fix it. This is my fault. He calls me a week later and says, hey, I really loved how level-headed you were and how you just took ownership of that file. Like, I know it wasn't your fault, but you still took ownership of it. Like, let's talk about working together. We worked together for 8 years now. So there's a ton of upside in being the one to solve the problem when you are the one to own the problem. And then lastly is just fear of responsibility. There's a huge upside to extreme ownership in that it also equals control. Right? Like, if you're the leader, don't you want to be the one who's responsible? Right? Don't you want that to ultimately land on your head, the good, the bad, the indifferent? Shouldn't you be the one who's responsible for the success or failures, whether it's good or bad? So you kind of want to reframe that, like, hey, I don't want to take responsibility for this thing. As soon as you do take responsibility of it, you now control it. And everybody looks to you to be the problem solver and be the person who's going to steer everybody in the right direction. So what I'd love to do, I want to make sure we have enough time for Danny. Team, tell me if you think this is a good strategy. If anyone has had a challenge in their personal life, in their professional life in the last week that you feel that you want to share and kind of work through, like, hey, how could I have done this better? I think it might be a good way for everybody to kind of learn from this if anybody feels good sharing it.
I can share.
Awesome.
It's been actually, I feel like my challenge this whole year was my chronic back pain that I ignored pre-pandemic, and once the pandemic hit, there like everything that I was doing to keep my back pain at to being able to deal with it went away, and I just couldn't work. And I had a great team at the time, but I was handling everybody. I was kind of babysitting everybody, and they didn't have enough experience under their belt. So when I wasn't available 24/7 to my team, that's when things started crumbling a little bit, losing some clients. I'm feeling a bit better now, and I need to take control because I got bills to pay, a family to support, and I just, that's been my biggest challenge of being able to work while my health is kind of messed up.
So I would say from a extreme ownership perspective, would you classify this as that you didn't take responsibility for your back and in your pain early enough, and that created these consequences?
I definitely, I kind of blame it on the small town because I have been trying to fix my back for 3.5 years. And I believe I just worked too hard in 2020 and kept on running. Like I used to be a triathlon athlete, and now I can't walk, which is heartbreaking.
Well, I would say that, there's going to be a lot of freedom in taking ownership on that, right? And realizing that, hey, like I can find the best doctors even if I have to drive a little ways, right? I can rebuild my team. Like, who you are, right? You know what you're capable of, right? As soon as you own it and say, like, nobody's going to fix this problem but me, right? Not my small town, not my team, not my people, not my realtors. Like, you can step right into that, and it's such an empowering feeling. So I would highly encourage you to just, realize, okay, here's the steps, right? You're going to, all the things that we just talked about, right? You're going to be highly respected, right, by your team because you're going to solve the problems, right? The consequences, as we talked about, they don't go away, they just get worse, right? You're going to hit those consequences head on, and you're the only one that's going to solve this problem.
Right.
So as soon as you know that, like, it should give you every ounce of power and strength in the world to go tackle it. And if we can help, please let us know. But I'm excited for you to step into that and get back where you're going. And I really appreciate you sharing.
Thank you.
Ryan, this is Krista from the Triibe, president of Triibe. And just want to add on to that, Hepzibah, I've had 3 back surgeries in my life.
Oh,
and
wow.
It took, yeah. And about ownership, right? I kept waiting for, like, somebody's going to fix me, but I'm going to keep doing the things that I'm doing and think that that's going to work out. And it took me until the 3rd one to get off the basketball court, to do the stuff I know that I needed to do, and to set the constraints in my life that would keep me healthy. And there were a bunch of other things, and people definitely helped me along the way.
Yeah.
But I had to take that ownership, and I'm not always great at it, but I wish you the best, and I know
Thank you. I'm definitely
sunshine on the other side.
Reaching out to more friends just because it's like pretty dark, and I have my surgery approved by insurance finally, so I feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Hey, so I have the luxury of kind of witnessing Krista. We've kind of championed each other's careers, and in real life we're also close. And what I can tell you as a spectator of her life and watching her go through these struggles with her back, like when we are on a vacation, she is waking up in the morning, she is foam rolling, she is stretching, she is so disciplined with her regimen. And I always have admired that about Krista. And I it's one of the main reasons I push so hard for her to lead this company, as crazy as that sounds. But what you've just witnessed is the way that Krista earned more respect from me from taking ownership of her back, which is exactly the situation that you're in. And my perspective of watching this discipline every single day and watching this woman solve her problems it's, you know, as like, and I don't think I've ever shared that with you, Krista, but like, it is a real life example of like, man, the sacrifice this woman is making on our vacations every single day to make sure that she's taking ownership of her health. I hope that that perspective provides you some inspiration for what you're going through, and how those actions, just like Ryan said, will reflect to your team and to the people that are watching you rise above this situation, because you are bigger than this situation. It's not going to hold you down.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
And as it looks like Rachel put some in the chat there for you. So you got a big community here of people, you know, a great tribe of people here that are helping you get there. Dustin, you had your hand up. What do you want to share about?
Don't know how to follow that one up. Over the weekend, so here's a quick little back history, right? So my top account, one of his real estate agents, haven't been in a relationship with him. And year and a half ago, we did one deal. I promised I'd give him an update on Tuesdays, which I always do. On one Tuesday, I didn't. And all of a sudden now we're out of relationship. So we get back together. We're getting a second run at building a relationship, and his personality and communication style kind of don't really complement mine, but I'm still trying to give him the best service. So bullet points are, I get notified of a new lead over the weekend. I take time out of my Sunday morning to do a pre-approval on the fly, bring the client in, ready to make an offer. Client is legitimately going from his house to meet up with the real estate agent with my pre-approval. And I'm in such a scramble that I left the computer, went out and did Sunday, adulting, and I never checked in with the realtor to let him know that we were good. I just assumed the client was going to do that. So fast forward Sunday evening, I get a text at 7 o'clock at night. I don't respond because that's my boundaries. I get another text at 6:30 in the morning from the same agent. Hey, following up on that text from last night. I don't respond. And I come to find out that all he's upset about is that I didn't check in with him, and I only checked in with the client. He goes, I had no idea what we were getting into. And the extreme ownership was, I was defensive initially that, hey, you're interrupting my boundaries. Like, there's nothing that's going to happen at 6:30 in the morning that's going to change the scope of the world. But instead, I listened to what his challenge was, and I just fell on the sword saying, you know what, you're absolutely right. I should have at least sent you a text message and checked in with you. I apologize. There's no excuse, but there was a life going on, and just want to let you know I want to do better. And there was just it was received completely different than a younger version of me.
Yeah, man, what I would, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I think we can all relate to those. What I would say is take ownership, but at the same time, solve the problem moving forward, right? So, I'd kind of script that. If you're the agent, I'd say, Dustin, look, this is 100% on me. I should have followed up with you. I let the client know they're approved and good to go. I should have followed up with you afterwards and let you know I'm going to do better at that moving forward, but I apologize. That being said, Dustin, I'm kind of struggling with my boundaries right now, and balancing my work and my family. And I want to be available for you and all my partners and my clients. What do you think is the best strategy for us to work together to create some synergies or some boundaries around this, where, if I am working, you'll know it. If I'm not, you have a backup where you have another team member to connect with, and then in terms of would you think it's appropriate that after 5 p.m. on a Saturday or Sunday, and before 8 a.m. on any given day, that we just call that kind of like a quiet time, unless there's an absolute world burning down situation, which I want to be available for? Just help me understand how you think we can, I'm just asking for your help as a friend and as a partner. What do you think we can do better there? And again, you've taken ownership, you've acknowledged that it's not going to happen again, and now you're asking for his partnership in helping you solve a problem. And now it's going to become his idea on how to protect your time, not your idea on how to protect your time. So he's going to have way more ownership and empowerment of that, which means he's not going to be like, well, I told Dustin I wouldn't call him after 6, and now I'm going to do it. It's his idea. And he's the guy who came up with it. So solve that problem at the same time you take ownership.
Yeah, it actually went almost identical to that, except I gave the boundaries. I didn't ask for the boundaries. So
Yeah,
always be learning, right?
remember how I came on that call? I was like, we're going to make this change. And everyone was like, and then I came on the next call. I'm like, that was bad leadership. I apologize. Next time I'm going to ask everybody what you think. And we got to the same damn place. Like everybody was like, yeah, this is what we should do. And I'm like, what an idiot. I should have just asked as opposed to told, because the only person that likes change is the person who came up with the idea to do the change. And I am guilty of that a lot. So good takeaway, a little bit different from extreme ownership, but also an incredible leadership trait.
Hey, Ryan, real quick on that point, I think what you did there was absolutely brilliant and something that we can deploy in any interaction, any relationship, right? Whether it's you're talking with your kids and wanting them to get buy-in to whatever lesson you're trying to teach them. I can come in and I can give them all the specifics of you're going to do this, this, and this. But if I empower them and they come and they bring me the solution, they've got ownership, they've got buy-in, they believe in it because it's their idea. So we'll talk more about this. We're going to get into the empowerment of team in the next one, but I just want you guys to start thinking about this in your interactions from this point forward, and hopefully have some good things to come and share in our next call, where you've taken and you've empowered the person across the table from you to bring the solution, because there's going to be that much more buy-in to the ideas that, again, it gets us to the same end solution that we were trying to achieve, but it does it in a way that doesn't burn leadership capital. It actually gains leadership capital.
Love that, dude. Thanks for sharing that. So team, that's kind of my session on extreme ownership and the fears around extreme ownership. So if you're going to, just kind of the summary of extreme ownership and taking it away is that, again, every problem you face in business and in life is a leadership problem. All right. So when you're in the middle of a problem or a conflict or a challenging situation, just let that trigger. Like, oh, this is a leadership thing. I can fix this by owning it. If that's the trigger, I promise you're going to have an awesome rest of the week and rest of your life and career as well. So we'll kick it over to Danny for his part. And thank you guys for your time and being here today. Hopefully this is helpful.
Team, this is a super great segue into the segment of this that I wanted to share with you today, which is about detachment and how detachment is just like the extreme ownership process. It is really a magical process. It completely transforms the ability that you will have on impacting the world around you, right? And kind of shaping that, or taking control of your environment, having a life that's by you, not to you. And the reason I say it's a perfect transition is because that's really what Dustin was demonstrating, that instead of being triggered and reacting to, what would have been a frustrating, I've been in that situation so many times, Dustin, where, I step away from the soccer game, to send a pre-approval letter. And I think to myself, like, oh my gosh, I hope they're understanding how valuable that time was that I just gave to them. And of course they never will, because they don't know, you know what I mean? And so, I would put so much weight on that sacrifice that I made and carry in the frustration of that and not detach from those emotions that I was feeling and put myself into the shoes of the person who was receiving that or the other party in that conversation. So the idea of detachment is really this. When you start to feel yourself triggered away from the process of taking ownership, separating yourself from the event and looking at the situation from the perspective of either from the other person or from the situation overall, but not from just your singular viewpoint, allows you the freedom to do what Ryan just described. So I would say that detachment is really step one in this process, because in order to take extreme ownership and understand that worldview, you need to turn down that part of your brain that is constantly searching for the things that are threatening to you, threatening to your business, threatening to your family, threatening to your ego. And turning down that part of the process is what detachment is really all about. So I want to say early in my career, but it was much later than I would like to admit. And some of the people on this call knew me back in 2011, 12, 13, when I was what I would describe as a terrible leader. And I was terrible at taking extreme ownership. And the reason I was terrible at it was that every time I would find myself in a situation where I was put in distress or pain, my adrenaline would kick off, my cortisol would kick off, and my focus would just narrowly focus in on the problem and whoever created that pain, in my opinion. And I got some really great coaching and advice. And this is something that I'd highly recommend taking a note of, because it transformed the way I experienced the world. And I still, Bo, I saw your note about like, how long does it take, to get good at this? In my experience, forever, unless I just really suck, which that's probably the actual case, was this term curious, not furious. So whenever I started feeling and being able to check in with your body is a superpower, and it's highly correlated with the ability to detach and the ability to take extreme ownership. So whenever I started feeling the feelings that told me that I was being triggered towards a blaming event or towards a event that would maybe inefficiently spend my leadership capital, which was what was happening, still happens today, but less often than it did early in my leadership career, I would, clenched fists, feeling heat in my neck and cheeks, right? Tightness on my chest. When I started to feel those feelings, I would say, oh, wait a second, something's happening here. I'm becoming furious. And if I let that fury spill over onto the people around me, my influence is going to go down. I need to take a step back and I need to get curious, right? And the first place of curiosity that I started to explore was an assumption of good intent, right? I'm going to assume that everybody in this situation did their best, including me. And I'm going to be really curious around if everybody did their best, but we got the wrong outcome, then the only answer was I failed to set the rules of engagement correctly. I failed to properly equip the team with what they needed. And it becomes really easy to take extreme ownership because I'm starting from a place of good intent. Everybody had great intent, right? And I'm curious about, okay, with great intent, the outcome wasn't what I was anticipating as the leader. So the only one left to blame is me. I want to also share though, because what was coming up for me, and this is going to be a slight detour, I'm going to come back to this idea of the superpower of detachment. One of the things that was coming up for me as Ryan was talking was that extreme ownership can feel really lonely, right? That fear that says, am I going to be the only one? And we've mentioned several times, like, this is about taking ownership, taking responsibility, and it feels really heavy, right? It feels like, holy crap, I'm going to end up taking and taking and taking. And one of the things I know about in my life right now, I'm speaking for myself, is that I need more freedom. I need more support. I need less responsibility and more focus on my genius zone. What I will offer you is that, kind of Ryan described it as magic, right? What the magic of extreme ownership is that people will start showing up for you. They will start volunteering to take things off your plate instead of you having to force them onto them, right? And like that, again, the reason I said this is a perfect segue is that script that Ryan just gave for the realtor. It invites that realtor into the process of building rules of engagement. And to kind of going back to Casey's comment with that underwriter, we're designed to be tribal animals. We're designed to be in community, but we're also designed to identify who is in the out group, who is not in our community. And the people that are typically not in our community are the ones that put us into pain. So and the reason I'm sharing this is to kind of hover in on Casey's, his experience with that underwriter. What he could have done was continue to have an environment where his tribe was not the same as the underwriter's tribe. And therefore they were in conflict. They were competing over resources, right? They were competing over ego. They were competing over rightness, right? And they were battling for those currencies. But what he did instead was say, look, we're part of the same tribe. And I don't know about all of you, but I'll share that I grew up in a family where we were extraordinarily tribal. I had 13 cousins all at the same elementary school as I was when I was growing up. And one thing I knew about that was that if inside of the tribe, we could be arguing, whatever, but if there was ever anybody that was outside of our family that came at one of us, it was a united front instantaneously. The power of tribalism is enormous, right? So Casey, what you did there by inviting the underwriter into your tribe was to say, hey, we're on the same side of the table. Let's solve this together so that the entire tribe can be lifted up, right? And you detached from this idea of I need to be right? You detached from the ego and you went straight to creating relationship that ultimately resulted in what's likely a better solution than either one of you would have been able to come up with independently. So by becoming curious, not furious, you can really elevate yourself above the problem. And I think I've self-described myself as probably the biggest nerd on this call every single time, but I'm really fascinated by brain chemistry. And it's absolutely biologically true that when we get put into fear or conflict, that our focus truly does narrow. Our ability to see and think peripherally deteriorates when we're threatened, when we feel like we're going to be getting into a conflict. And one of the things that detachment allows you to do, and there's other ways to describe detachment, presence, right? Being separate from the event and kind of seeing things from another person's perspective, walking in their shoes. What that allows you to do is engage more of your brain. So when you're threatened or when you're in conflict, only a very limited part of your brain can be used to create solutions. And the fight, flight, freeze instincts are the ones that you're left with when you're in that state. When you detach and essentially invite your entire brain, and then hopefully even the brains of others into the conversation, you're kind of turning off that fear-based mode and getting yourself into a place where you see more of the picture and you have an opportunity for other people to be invited into the decision-making process. And the way it was described at the workshop was by I can't recall if it was Jocko or Leif describing a situation where they were in a firefight and no one was making a call. Like no one was there saying, hey, we should go right or left or back or forward. And at one point, I believe it was Jocko said he stopped looking down the barrel of his gun and he put his gun up and he just put his head up and looked around. And he realized that the entire 9-person team was looking down the barrel of their gun and they were individually trying to target their individual problem. But when he stepped back and gave himself perspective, he detached from the firefight and he realized he was able to see the battlefield. He was able to see the 8 other people that were there. He was able to make a call that no one that was looking down their gun was able to make. And the reason I share that and the reason they shared it and why it's important to all of this stuff that I've been communicating so far is that as the leader, your perspective, your big picture perspective is more valuable to the team than anything that you can do by staring down the barrel of the gun. All of the targets you can individually take down are nothing compared to what you can do by augmenting the impact and power of the group by detaching and then taking ownership over the decisions that come from that detachment. So does anybody want to add to that? I kind of said a lot of stuff there that was a little bit meandering, but yeah, Chris, go for it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. And Danny, I want to go back to the tactical piece that you brought up. And I think this is important as it relates to Bo's comment, right? Like, how long does it take to get good at this? Well, the first thing that happens is awareness, right? And that's what the intent of what we're doing here is we're creating awareness for when you find yourself in a situation, you're going to have what Danny described. I feel the burn, or I feel fear, or I feel anxiety, or I feel stress. That's the awareness that's created. Step 2 is, all right, what action do I take, right? Tactically, what are we talking about on this call? So the first thing, going to what Danny was describing, the curious, not furious, slow down, take a deep breath, and then realize, okay, let me get more information out of this. And to Danny's point about getting curious, one key point that I want to make sure everybody is aware of, and I have been the biggest perpetrator in this over my career, in my relationships, is I'm already thinking about what my next response is going to be. When I start to get curious, I'm like, well, how am I going to respond to this? And all of a sudden what that does is that shuts me down from truly being able to hear what the other person is saying. So tactically, I would encourage you guys to start practicing when you're listening. Stop thinking about what you want to say next. Truly be curious and listen to what the person across from you is saying. That's going to allow you to get curious in the right way, to see the bigger picture of the landscape and start walking to a better solution. And so I think that tactical piece, Bo, to your question, like, I don't think we ever stop. I don't think we ever get to the point to where we're there and we've got it solved. But if you all of a sudden walk away from this call and something happens, you create awareness and you're like, that's right, I need to take a deep breath. I get curious, not furious, and I want to listen. It's going to be amazing what you see that comes out on the other side of that. And it's practicing that over and over and over that allows you to get better at it, but never stop, right? You're constantly going to be getting better.
Yeah, what I would add to that, Chris, and that was really a really great slight pivot, is that, and I'm a huge fan of spectrums and ratios, as the nerd on the call. So if you think about the spectrum between asking and telling, a leader is high ask, low tell. A manager is high tell, low ask. So you're basically making a decision every time you interact with somebody, whether you're going to be their leader or their manager, depending on whether you're approaching them with questions or with instructions.
Danny, can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
That goes directly back to, Ryan saying, hey, the only person that loves change is the guy whose idea it was to change, right? When we were at this conference, Jocko was coaching with someone out of the crowd, and he was like, that's imposing. All you're doing is imposing. If you want to see how much people like imposing, go home tonight and tell your kids that they have to eat something. He was like, I don't even care what it is. Just tell them they have to eat it. And he was like, and you'll see exactly, who likes to be imposed upon, right? Like, great leadership is saying, hey, Danny, I have this problem. This thing keeps happening in our business where we're having to be reactionary to a client asking us about supplemental taxes. And to provide the best level of service, I don't want them to ever have to ask that again. I want to put something in place that just totally nails this down. Do you have any ideas on how we can make sure that no client ever asks that question again? Right. And so then your team's going to come to the same exact conclusion as you, which is putting a process in place to make sure that that never happens again. But if you genuinely are asking, hey, how can we solve this problem together? You're getting buy-in. And a lot of times, to Chris's point, and he does this as good, if not better, than any human being on the planet, they provide a solution that is so much better than what you had in mind that it's absolutely mind-blowing. And it's really fun to watch people who do this very well. And I think that, your example of the spectrum of telling and asking, think about yourself. Like, if you're asked how to solve a problem and you give a solution and it's 20 times better than the one that I had, you're going to feel more valued. You're going to feel more purpose. You're going to tackle the problem better. It's just better all the way around, not only for leadership, but for life.
Mark, I want to add something to what you said, because I think that's really important. When you empower somebody to bring the solution, even if it's not better than what you had in your mind, even if it's 80% of what you thought was the perfect solution, the power that they're going to show up to execute on that plan is far superior than if I, what was the word that you used, that I impose my will on what I want them to do. It's theirs. They take ownership of it, and they're going to show up in a way that actually creates a far greater execution because they believe in it so much. So it doesn't have to be as good as what you would have thought of, or better than what you thought of. Now, if they're, completely going down the wrong track with the solution they bring, it's okay to ask further questions, right? Bring things to light that they might not have thought, and still allow them to walk through that, to what the actual solution should be that's going to get the results that you're looking for. But it doesn't have to be the perfect solution. It can be 80%, but it will cause them to show up in such a bigger way when they execute on it.
Casey, what do you got? You're muted, bud.
RG, weren't you going to tackle that issue in the chat box, or do you want to go to Casey? I'm just trying to.
Yeah, let's go to Casey, and then I can wrap it up soon.
So quick kind of follow up to like Danny and Chris and Mark and Ryan and even Dustin kind of talking about how you do this. And I was like actually pinging Ryan on my own issues. Like I've read this book about a year ago and it's been really good. And lately I've just been like, I feel like I need to prove a point with people of like how wrong they are. And it's one of those things that happens in our life is that when you're not working on it and continually getting better at your craft, and why this is so great of what they're coaching here is that you will go back to how you were before. And I forget, Danny probably knows the law, right? Because he's the geek,
the nerd
of the group. But
yeah.
There's a law in there that if you're not working on something, it will always go back to who you were before. And I think with this stuff is like it's constantly having these communications, these just the 3 paragraphs that Ryan sent me were like, man, that's right. I don't need to point this person out and lay them the law, even though they're wrong. Like that's not how you get things done. So anyways, it's always you're always growing in this. And if you're not, you're going backwards.
Yeah, and like you said, you're going to get to a place of where we are when we were born, right? We're defensive by nature. We have to be. Our brain its only job is to keep us alive, right? So anytime we feel attacked, we're naturally going to be defensive. So this is not a natural or innate thing. This takes like actual work, and you have to be aware of when you're in a combative situation and to do something that's not instinctive, right? You have to act differently than you would normally. So that's a great awareness, Casey. Danny, what'd you have?
Yeah, well, it's a perfect transition to my wrap, which is that your brain is going to try to sabotage you. Sorry for that noise in the background.
All right, someone's trying to get in the house.
When you decide, you make the commitment to take extreme ownership, your brain is going to say, it's going to scream at you, no, like we can't do that. It's scary. We're going to get in trouble. All the fears that Ryan said, it's going to try, your ego is going to try to talk you out of it. And that's where the detachment happens, right? You have to be able to tell the voice in your head, no, you're wrong. Like I know better. And I'm going to make a conscious decision to show up and take extreme ownership over these issues, because that's going to give me the power to get to a solution that I'm going to invite people into so that I don't have to carry all the weight on my shoulders. And then we're going to create a system so that the next problem we have to solve together is going to be bigger than this one. And that's exactly what you want to get in your life, is every day you're solving problems that are bigger than the problems you had yesterday. Thank you, you guys. It was great sharing all this with you today.
That was rad, Danny. Thank you for being a nerd. So I'll end with this, and we can do some more on the Q&A on the follow-up on this, but question I get asked a lot, and I actually asked Jocko this at a previous event that I was at. I raised my hand and I was like, hey, you can only take extreme ownership so many times before it's like legitimately not your fault. Like, hey, my fault, I didn't train you, I'm going to train you. Problem happens again. My fault, I didn't train you well enough, train you again. My fault, you can only do this so many times. And he goes, so basically what you want to do is escalated leadership. So example, if someone doesn't show up to work on time, right? So Mark works with me. Mark shows up late. Hey, Mark, is everything okay? Like, you're never usually late. I just want to make sure you're okay. I want to make sure you're good. Yeah, sorry, boss, got a flat tire. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no problem, man. I was just worried about you. Right? Like, let us know if you need anything, if we can help. You're just there for him. You're caring for him. Right? A week later, Mark shows up late again. Hey, Mark, just, sorry if I didn't make this clear. My fault. Like, we always show up on time here. We're a team. We always, show up at this time. And I just want to know if we can help you with that. What happened? Oh, my kids, it's not, but okay, great. Yeah, it's no worries. We're here for you. Just, again, I apologize if I didn't make that clear, but moving forward, let's stick to this. Okay, great. Mark shows up late again a week later. Right? Now I'm going to escalate my level of leadership. Mark, man, I'm really sorry. Apparently I didn't make this like abundantly clear. We do need to show up at 8, and I know you've had some issues. What can we do to make sure you don't show up late moving forward? Because if it happens again, we're gonna have to write you up, and then all sorts of not fun things happen. Like, can we, would it be better to leave 10 minutes earlier? Can we help you with, better tires? Like, how can we help you show up on time? Like, how can I be a better leader to make sure you're here? No, none of it happened again, blah, 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 right? Mark shows up again late the following week. Mark, man, I apologize. Apparently I'm just not helping you understand this, right? We're gonna have to write you up, and if it happens again, we're gonna have to let you go. because we're a team. We show up on time. This is not just any old team. This is the elite all-star team. We are all privileged to be on this team together. And, if I didn't make that clear, I'm going to own that. But, if you want to be a part of the all-star team, this is what has to happen. And, we got to do this. And then at that point, he always says, look, people will self-select at that point, right? They'll either be like, I can't live up to this expectation and I can't do what they're asking me to do, and they'll leave, right? It's very rare that you actually get to the point when you escalate that level of leadership where you actually need to terminate somebody or let them go, because they would just feel so awkward getting to that point, and they feel like they're letting you down so often that they can't meet it. So we can go over more of that on kind of the Q&A. And I would love for you guys to bring examples or things that are happening between now and the next couple of weeks in your life that you're coming across, and we can kind of work through those, because I think real life helps a little bit, scripting through these things and helping you kind of role play them, I think would be helpful. But last thing, and I'll leave it alone, and then Krista, if you want to take us home, you can, or Mark. Don't just think about this as a business resource. This is incredibly helpful if you're having a relationship challenge, if you're having challenges with your children, if you're having challenges with your weight, with your health, with your wellness, with your mindfulness, anything, any area of your life. There's 8 equities that we preach. 8 equities of your life. Any of those are having challenges, it's a leadership problem. Right. So don't just think of this as how can I improve my business with this, because you're going to be letting go all the more important things, which will then translate back into your business as well. So I'll leave it with that.
Hey, thank you so much. For those of you that haven't been here, there's a lot of first-time people. We just want to say thanks for stopping in to check out Triibe, and so that you know the nature of these calls. Typically, what's been happening is we'll produce content like this. Everyone deploys and starts using this. And so on the Q&A call, which is going to happen December 2nd at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we'll bring challenges, just like Ryan said, or scenarios. Hey, I just don't know how to have extreme ownership around this. I just don't know how to step back and get perspective. We'll take each of those examples, we'll work together through them on the call, and any other struggles that you're working with. That's what our Q&A is for, is just to really work through problems. And what you'll find is as you share, people have the same issues. Hepzibah and her back issues today, and what Krista has gone through, and seeing different perspectives. That stuff happens all the time. Ryan, Danny, I especially want to thank you guys for bringing personal stories and sharing with everybody today some of these nuggets that we learned from extreme ownership, and just cannot tell you how great this community is at lifting one another up. We appreciate you guys, and cannot wait to see you on our December 2nd call. Go out, practice extreme ownership, like Ryan said, in your personal and your business life, and bring us the challenges, because you will run into challenges, right? And let's work through them on our next call. Take care, guys. Appreciate you being part of the tribe. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate you.
Have a great day, team.